Sometimes it looks like showing up again and again until the silence breaks on its own. She paused. To the class of 2025, my wish for us is simple. That we see each other. Really see each other, because once you do, you can't unsee. She stepped back. The room was quiet for half a second. Then came the applause, not thunderous, but sincere, real. That evening, Leah Carter sat in her room, cap and gown folded neatly on the chair beside her, a soft breeze drifting through the open window. She picked up her phone and opened her messages. A new one from an unknown number. Just 3 words. Thank you. She stared at it, unsure how to feel. Forgiveness wasn't a switch you could flip. But maybe it started like this. Small, unfinished, human. She put the phone down, not replying. Some things didn't need answers. Graduation day arrived hot and bright. Families packed the football field, fanning themselves with programs. David Carter sat in the 3rd row, sunglasses on, his posture proud but relaxed. When Savannah's name was called, he didn't shout. He just smiled. The kind of smile that holds decades of history, struggle, and hope. She crossed the stage, diploma in hand, head held high, and for the first time in months, she felt light. Like the weight she had carried, the judgment, the whispers, the silence had finally lifted. Later, as they drove home with the windows down and the summer air brushing their faces, David Carter asked, "So, what's next for you, kid?" Leah Carter thought for a moment, then smiled. "I think I just want to enjoy being me for a while. No speeches, no lessons, just life." He nodded. "You earned that." As the Camry rolled down the familiar streets of Mon, past the river and the red brick library and the grocery store where Leah Carter used to beg for peanut M&Ms at checkout, she looked out at the town that had tried to make her small and failed. She didn't need a tiara to feel like a queen. She didn't need revenge to feel powerful. She had something far more enduring. The knowledge that she had faced cruelty with grace, walked through injustice without bitterness, and came out not just intact, but wiser, stronger, and beautifully unbroken. And somewhere in a quiet corner of Riverside High, a tarnished crown gathered dust, forgotten on a shelf. Because the girl they tried to humiliate had already stepped into a different kind of royalty, the kind you don't vote for, the kind you earn. One quiet step at a. Leah Carter didn't need to scream to be heard. She didn't need to fight back with fire. All she did was keep showing up, with quiet strength and unwavering grace. In a world quick to crown the loudest voices, she proved that resilience speaks volumes, even in silence. Her story is more than a cautionary tale. It's a call to look deeper, to question who we celebrate, and to stand tall even when no one claps. If her journey moved you, please support this message by hitting like, leaving a thoughtful comment, and subscribing to Soulful Stories V, where we tell stories that matter, and voices like Leah's are never overlooked. Now, let's hear from you. Should Belle have been permanently removed from school events? Do you think Leah should have confronted her bullies directly? And here's the real question. Can a school truly change if the culture stays silent? Let us know below. Because the conversation doesn't end here, it starts with you. Shadow loomed over him. "Oh man, this is sad." Chase Morgan announced loudly, ensuring the whole table heard. "Sitting all alone, eating what is that, a prison meal?" Dylan Scott leaned in, smirking. "Maybe that's all he can afford." Ethan's grip on his sandwich tightened. "Chase Morgan wasn't done, you know, Carter. Maybe if you actually did something with your life, people would talk to you." Noah Bennett kept eating. Chase Morgan scowled. He hated being ignored, so he did what Chase Morgan always did. He reached forward and flipped Ethan's tray, sending his food splattering across the table onto his lap. The cafeteria went silent. Everyone was watching. Noah Bennett exhaled. He looked down at his ruined lunch. Then slowly he looked up, his expression unreadable. Chase Morgan expected anger, rage, humiliation. Instead, Noah Bennett just stood up, wiped his hands on his jeans, and walked away. No words, no reaction. Jason's smirk faltered. He didn't like that, not one bit. That wasn't the end of it. It never was. A few days later, Noah Bennett opened his locker to find his money gone. The small stash he had been saving from his part-time job vanished. In its place, a note: "Thanks for the lunch money, loser." Chase Morgan and his friends watched from across the hallway, laughing, nudging each other. Noah Bennett clenched his fists. That money wasn't for him, it was for Zoe Bennett, his 5-year-old sister, for her food, for her school supplies, for their survival. But still Noah Bennett said nothing. He slammed his locker shut and walked away, and Chase Morgan, oblivious to the truth, just laughed. But someone else had been watching. Reese Callahan had been in town for a few weeks working on a small project. He had seen a lot of things in his life, people who talked big, people who acted Tough people who fought battles they didn't need to fight, and then he saw Noah Bennett, the boy who never fought back, the boy who looked like he was carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders. Something about it didn't sit right, so one evening he followed him, and what he found shocked him. Reese Callahan didn't consider himself a nosy person, but there was something about Noah Bennett that unsettled him. Maybe it was the way the boy carried himself, too quiet, too tired, too resigned. Maybe it was the way those other kids tormented him, pushing, taunting, humiliating, while he took it all without a word. Or maybe it was the way he walked out of that cafeteria, shoulders stiff, face unreadable, but eyes that carried something deeper than just the usual hurt. Whatever it was, Reese Callahan needed to know, and so he followed him. Noah Bennett left school in the same hurried manner, every day, no loitering, no chatting, no wasting time at his locker. He moved with purpose, his steps quick, his head down. Reese Callahan stayed a safe distance behind, watching as the boy cut through town, slipping into side streets, avoiding the main roads where other students might see him. It was like he was trying to disappear. Eventually Noah Bennett reached a small rundown house on the outskirts of town, paint peeling the lawn, overgrown, a single dim light flickering from the porch. Not the kind of place a 16-year-old should be returning to alone. He unlocked the door and stepped inside. Reese Callahan waited, debating whether to leave, but then he saw something through the window that stopped him cold. A little girl. She came running toward Noah Bennett the moment he entered, throwing her tiny arms around his waist. Noah Bennett bent down, hugging her tightly, whispering something. Reese Callahan couldn't hear. The exhaustion in his face softened into something else, love, warmth, responsibility. He scooped her up and carried her inside, kicking the door shut behind him, and that was all Reese Callahan needed to see. He had his answer. Noah Bennett wasn't just some poor kid being bullied at school. He was something much more than that. He was a brother raising a child. That night Reese Callahan couldn't shake the image from his mind. He had seen plenty of tough guys in his life, people who acted like they had the weight of the world on their shoulders, but none of them had actually been carrying it like Noah Bennett was. He wasn't just surviving high school, he was surviving life, and nobody knew, nobody saw it, except now Reese Callahan did, and he wasn't about to ignore it. The next day at school things went on as usual. Noah Bennett moved through the hallways in his silent, invisible way. Chase Morgan and his friends, emboldened by their recent success, were already plotting their next move. Today's target, Ethan's shoes. Those things look like they've been through a war. Dylan Scott snickered, eyeing the torn-up sneakers Noah Bennett always wore. Think he's waiting for them to fall apart completely before getting a new pair. Chase Morgan smirked. I say we helped speed up the process. It didn't take much, a simple accidental trip as Noah Bennett passed by in the hallway, sending him stumbling forward, books scattering across the floor. Before he could recover, Chase Morgan casually stepped down right on top of Ethan's shoe. A crack sounded, a sole already hanging by, a thread ripped clean off. Laughter erupted. Noah Bennett stared at his ruined shoe for a long moment, jaw tightening, fingers curling into fists at his side. But then, as always, he said nothing. He just picked up his books, shoved them into his bag, and limped away. But this time Reese Callahan saw everything. Something inside him snapped. Enough was enough. That afternoon, as Chase Morgan and his friends sat in the cafeteria, basking in their latest victory, a shadow loomed over their table. They looked up, then immediately wished they hadn't. Reese Callahan, arms crossed, eyes cold. Chase Morgan smirk faltered. You think you're tough, huh? Vin's voice was calm, but there was something dangerous behind it. Tearing people down, making yourselves feel bigger by making someone else feel smaller. Chase Morgan swallowed, shifting uncomfortably. I don't know what you're talking about, man. Reese Callahan didn't blink. You know exactly what I'm talking about. And here's the thing, you got no clue what that boy's been through. None of you do, but I do. Dylan Scott forced a laugh. What, you his bodyguard now? Reese Callahan leaned forward, resting his hands on the table. Number, but maybe he should have one. His gaze swept across them, his expression unreadable. Leave him alone, Chase Morgan huffed. Or what? Vin's eyes darkened. Or you're going to find out what it's like to be on the other side of this game you love playing. Silence. Nobody moved then. Without another word, Reese Callahan straightened and walked away. Chase Morgan exhaled, forcing a smirk. Whatever he muttered, but the laughter was gone. The victory, the satisfaction, it had vanished, replaced by something else, something uncomfortable, because for the first time someone had stood up for Noah Bennett, and Chase Morgan wasn't sure how to handle that. Meanwhile, Noah Bennett had no idea any of it had happened. He had spent the afternoon at work scrubbing dishes, ignoring the ache in his feet. His shift ended late like always, and he made his way home in the dark. But when he reached his front porch, he stopped. Something was sitting there, a box. Confused, he bent down and opened it. Inside, a brand new pair of sneakers, sturdy, high quality, better than anything he had ever owned. A small note was tucked inside. No one fights alone. Noah Bennett stared at it for a long time. Then, for the first time in a long time, his eyes burned, not with exhaustion, not with pain, but with something else, hope. The next day, Chase Morgan saw Noah Bennett walk into school with new shoes, and for the first time Chase Morgan felt small. Chase Morgan stopped staring. Noah Bennett, the same kid he and his friends had spent weeks humiliating, walked into school that morning wearing a brand new pair of sneakers, not the torn, barely held together pair he had been limping around in the day before. These were sturdy, clean, well-made. They didn't belong to a kid. Like Noah Bennett, they didn't fit the image Chase Morgan had built of him in his mind. Chase Morgan had seen the way Noah Bennett carried himself, how he never pushed back, how he never even tried to defend himself. He was supposed to be a nobody, a loser, someone with nothing, and yet here he was walking through the hallways looking almost unshaken for the first time since they started tormenting him. Chase Morgan felt something unexpected doubt. Dylan Scott leaned in. Where do you think he got those, Logan? Price scoffed. Probably stole them, but Chase Morgan wasn't convinced. Something didn't add up. He had stolen from Noah Bennett. Before he had seen what little the kid had, there was no way he had the money to buy those. Then he remembered the conversation in the cafeteria yesterday. Reese Callahan, that guy, had shown up out of nowhere defending Noah Bennett like he knew something nobody else did. Chase Morgan did. Like it had made him uneasy. He needed to know more. The day passed as usual, but Chase Morgan couldn't shake the feeling that there was something about Noah Bennett that he and his friends had missed that afternoon. Instead of heading home, he did something he had never done before. He followed Noah Bennett. Noah Bennett left school the same way he always did, quickly, head down, moving with a kind of urgency that Chase Morgan had never bothered to question before. Chase Morgan stayed back, keeping his distance, weaving through the crowds as Noah Bennett disappeared into the quieter parts of town. He expected the kid to go to some rundown part-time job or a crumbling apartment. What he didn't expect was to see Noah Bennett step into a tiny, barely standing house at the edge of town. It was small, barely big enough for two people, with paint peeling from the walls and a front porch that looked like it might collapse at any second. Chase Morgan frowned. This wasn't just a bad home, it was a desperate one. He moved closer, staying low, peering through a side window. Inside, he saw Noah Bennett drop his bag onto a chair and turn just as a little girl came running into the room. She couldn't have been more than 5. Noah Bennett bent down, scooping her up with ease, holding her close as she giggled against his shoulder. Chase Morgan blinked, completely thrown off. A sister. He had never even considered the possibility. He had never seen Noah Bennett talk about family, never heard him mention parents or siblings, but now watching him pull a small carton of milk from the fridge, half empty, with barely any food on the shelves behind it, Chase Morgan realized something horrifying. Noah Bennett wasn't just some poor kid struggling to get by. He was raising his sister alone. Chase Morgan took a step back, his heart pounding, his mind raced, trying to process everything he had just seen. The exhaustion on Ethan's face, the way he always left school so fast, the way he never had money, the way he never fought back. It wasn't because he was weak, it was because he couldn't afford to fight back. Every dollar he earned, every ounce of energy he had, was going into keeping that little girl safe, and Chase Morgan had spent weeks making his life even harder. Guilt clawed at his chest in a way he had never felt before. He had always thought of himself as just having fun playing around, putting Noah Bennett in his place, but he had never once stopped to think that Noah Bennett had bigger problems than schoolyard bullying. Chase Morgan had stolen from him. He had taken money that was meant for his sister's food. He had broken his shoes when those were probably the only ones. He had a sickening feeling churned in Jason's stomach. He had never felt bad for bullying anyone before, but this was different. He had crossed a line he hadn't even known existed. That night Chase Morgan lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The image of Noah Bennett holding his little sister burned into his mind. He thought about the brand new shoes Noah Bennett had worn that day. Someone had given them to him, Reese Callahan. That man had stepped in where Chase Morgan should have stopped, and for the first time in his life Chase Morgan felt ashamed of the person he had become. The next day Chase Morgan didn't say anything to his friends. He didn't laugh at their jokes. He didn't join in when they snickered about Ethan's quiet demeanor. Instead, he found himself watching from a distance, observing, thinking. By lunch he had made a decision. It wasn't much, it wasn't enough, but it was something. Noah Bennett returned to his locker that afternoon and found something waiting for him, a simple black backpack, brand new, sturdy, with zippers that actually worked. Inside, a stack of neatly folded bills, exactly the amount that had been stolen from him, and a small scrawled note, "I owe you one." Noah Bennett stared at it for a long time, his hands tightened around the bag, his throat thick. He didn't need to ask who had left it. He knew, and for the first time he realized something had changed. Chase Morgan had stopped laughing. Noah Bennett stood in front of his locker, staring at the brand new backpack. In his hands, the weight of it felt unfamiliar, the sturdy material foreign against his fingertips. It wasn't just the bag, it was the money inside, the exact amount that had been stolen from him, and the note, "I owe you one." There was no name, but Noah Bennett didn't need one. He knew Chase Morgan. For the first time in weeks, Noah Bennett felt something other than exhaustion, other than frustration, other than the heavy burden of surviving each day. It was something fragile, something he wasn't sure he could trust. A crack in the pattern, a shift in the balance. Chase Morgan, the same person who had laughed at his misery, had stolen from him, had made him feel less than human, was now trying to make amends. But why? Noah Bennett wasn't naive. People like Chase Morgan didn't change overnight. There had to be a reason. He turned, scanning the cafeteria, and his eyes found Chase Morgan sitting at his usual table. But something was different. Chase Morgan wasn't laughing, he wasn't smirking, he wasn't even talking to his friends. He just sat there, quiet, staring down at his tray, pushing his Food around without eating. Dylan Scott and Logan Price were talking. Cracking jokes, but Chase Morgan did react. He looked lost. Noah Bennett didn't know what to do with that. He had spent so long learning to ignore Chase Morganto, endure to tune out the cruelty, and now faced with this act of silent reparation, he found himself unsure. Did Chase Morgan think a backpack and some money would erase everything that a single gesture would make up for weeks of torment? Noah Bennett wasn't sure if he could forgive, but he wasn't sure if he couldn't either. That afternoon, as he left school, he felt a presence behind him. He turned, expecting another ambush, but instead found Chase Morgan standing a few feet away, hands shoved in his pockets, his usual confidence nowhere to be found. "I know you know it was me," Chase Morgan muttered, not quite meeting Ethan's gaze. He hesitated, exhaling sharply. "I was a dick. I didn't know. I mean, I should have, but I didn't." "About Zoe Bennett, about your parents, about everything." Noah Bennett stiffened. The fact that Chase Morgan even knew Zoe Bennett's name sent a surge of defensiveness through him. "Who told you?" Chase Morgan shifted uncomfortably. I followed you." "Not in a creepy way, just I needed to understand." He ran a hand through his hair, looking more frustrated with himself than anything else. "I didn't get it before. I thought you were just, I don't know, some quiet loser who didn't care, but I was wrong. You're not weak, Carter. You're stronger than any of us." Noah Bennett wasn't sure how to respond to that. He had spent so long believing that strength was measured in how much he could endure and how well he could protect Zoe Bennett and how much he could sacrifice. He had never expected someone like Chase Morgan to say those words to him. Chase Morgan took a step back, rubbing the back of his neck. "I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't deserve that. But I wanted you to know that I'm done with all of it." He hesitated, then added, "And if anyone else gives you, I'll make sure they don't." Noah Bennett studied him for a long moment, searching for insincerity, for any trace of mockery, but there was none. Just a boy who had spent too long being someone he wasn't proud of, trying awkwardly, hesitantly to be better. Noah Bennett didn't say thank you. He didn't nod. He didn't smile, but he also didn't walk away, and for Chase Morgan, that was enough. Things didn't change overnight, but they did change. Chase Morgan stopped laughing at Noah Bennett. Dylan Scott and Logan Price followed his lead, confused at first, but unwilling to push back against their leader. Sudden shift. The cafeteria incident stopped. The shoving in the hallways ended, and though Noah Bennett still kept to himself, still avoided unnecessary conversations, he found that the weight on his shoulders felt just a little bit lighter. Reese Callahan, watching from a distance, noticed one afternoon after Ethan's shift at the diner Reese Callahan was waiting outside. He leaned against his car, arms crossed, that knowing smirk on his face, so he said as Noah Bennett approached, "I see the kid finally grew a conscience." Noah Bennett exhaled, shaking his head. "I don't know what happened." Reese Callahan nodded thoughtfully. "Guilt's a funny thing, hits you in places you didn't expect. Some people ignore it, some people let it eat them alive, and some people—" He tilted his head, watching Noah Bennett closely try to fix what they broke. Noah Bennett frowned. "Do you think he can?" Reese Callahan considered the question for a long moment before replying. "I think he's trying, and sometimes that's the hardest part." Noah Bennett didn't respond right away. He thought about Jason's expression that day outside school, the uncertainty in his voice, the way he had seemed smaller. "Somehow, I don't know if I can ever forgive him," Noah Bennett admitted. Reese Callahan smiled, a little sad, a little knowing. "That's not something you owe him. Forgiveness isn't about making him feel better. It's about making sure you don't carry the weight of what he did any longer than you have to." Noah Bennett wasn't sure if he was ready for that, but maybe someday he would be. Winter came, and with it a new reality. Noah Bennett still worked late nights, still picked Zoe Bennett up from daycare, still did everything he had always done to keep them afloat, but things were different now. One day, he found a small envelope tucked into his locker, no name, no handwriting. He recognized inside was a neatly folded sheet of paper. "The school's got a fund for students in need. Some of us pitched in, just thought you should know. No one should have to do this alone." Noah Bennett stared at it, his throat tightening. He didn't need to ask who had left it. A few weeks later, a scholarship application arrived in his mailbox. He didn't need to ask about that either, and when Zoe Bennett came home one evening to find a brand new backpack waiting for her filled with school supplies, she had never dared to ask for Noah Bennett, just sat on the couch, pressing his fingers to his temples, exhaling shakily. No one owed him anything, no one had to help. But they had. For the first time in a long time, he wasn't fighting completely alone, and maybe, just maybe, that was enough.